I like you, but I'm not in love with you anymore, my girlfriend calmly whispered. I decided to mirror her words back. Weeks later, her friends and parents demanded answers she couldn't give that I'm 31, she's 29. We'd been together a little over 4 years when this story began to crack open. We met in what I'd describe as the most ordinary way possible, through mutual friends at a birthday dinner. She laughed at one of my dumb puns. I noticed she didn't flinch when I talked about my boring accounting job, and by the end of the night, we were swapping playlists like teenagers. Our relationship grew slowly, predictably. Movie nights at my apartment, shared grocery runs, weekend road trips where we argued about music but never about money. It wasn't fireworks all the time, but it was solid. And after the chaos of my 20s, solid felt like exactly what I needed. I thought she felt the same. For the first couple of years, everything ran on invisible rails. We had inside jokes. We decorated our small place with secondhand furniture. We adopted a rescue cat named Milo who decided she was his favorite human but tolerated me. We split chores without keeping score. Friends often told us we were the stable couple, the ones who hosted board game nights, who never blew up publicly, who seemed destined to either marry or at least co-sign a mortgage. But if I looked back carefully, the red flags were already there, just camouflaged as quirks. She was always a little distant when it came to heavy emotions. If I had a bad day at work and tried to vent, she'd listen politely, then change the subject to something light. When I asked once what she feared most in life, she deflected with a joke about running out of snacks. I chalked it up to her being lighthearted. I told myself not everyone processes the world through deep talks. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I felt a faint glass wall between us. Then there were her friendships. She had a tight-knit circle from college, all very outspoken. Whenever we'd go out with them, they'd tease her about how safe she played things, how she'd always been the responsible one. I laughed along, but I noticed she bristled. Later, in the car, she'd go quiet and say things like, "They don't get how exhausting it is being reliable all the time." I'd squeeze her hand, tell her I appreciated her reliability, and we'd move on. But the seed of discontent was there, even if I didn't recognize it fully. The shift started subtle. Around year 4, she got more involved in social activities without me. Work happy hours, weekend brunches, girls' nights that stretched until 2 a.m. Again, nothing inherently wrong. People need their own lives. But the frequency grew, and the invitations to me shrank. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile and say, "Of course, don't overthink it. I just need balance." Still, the balance seemed increasingly tilted away from us. I noticed her texts got shorter, less warm. Where she used to send me random memes during the day, now it was just logistical notes. "Don't forget milk." Or nothing at all. Our dinners grew quieter, her gaze often drifting to her phone. Once, while folding laundry, I asked if she was happy. She paused, holding one of my shirts, and said, "I think so. I just feel like I'm missing something, but I don't know what." Then she changed the subject. That something hung in the air for weeks. I'm not blind. I started worrying she'd met someone else. I even checked her phone once when she left it unlocked on the couch. No affair, no suspicious messages, just endless group chats with her friends, memes, Instagram reels. But still, her emotional absence was louder than any evidence I could find. One night, she came home late from dinner with friends. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open but not working, Milo curled beside me. She walked in, kicked off her shoes, and sat down heavily. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Tired, almost gentle, but detached. Then, in a quiet voice that didn't match the weight of the words, she said, "I like you, but I'm not in love with you anymore." The sentence was surgical. No shouting, no tears, just a calm incision straight through the fabric of our life. I sat frozen, the room spinning. My first instinct was to argue, to plead, to ask when it happened why she hadn't said anything sooner. But the way she looked at me, serene, almost rehearsed, told me she'd already played this conversation out in her head. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. And in that silence, an idea formed. If she claimed she only liked me now, maybe I'd give her exactly that. No anger, no begging, just treatment that matched her words. I didn't know then how far that decision would ripple that I didn't explode that night. No begging, no accusations, not even a half-hearted, "We can work this out." Instead, I just nodded slowly, like she'd told me we were low on detergent. My mouth was dry, but I managed. Okay, thanks for telling me. Her eyebrows twitched upward, just for a second, like she hadn't expected agreement. But then she exhaled, relieved, and retreated to the bedroom. I sat in the living room until the sun started bleeding into the sky. The cat stretched across my lap, and my brain went in circles. My heart was a howling mess, but beneath it all, there was a strange clarity. If she only liked me, I'd treat her like someone I merely liked. No more bending over backwards. No more carrying the weight of two people's affection. She wanted distance disguised as honesty? Fine, I could do distance. The next morning, I made coffee for myself only. Normally, I poured her a cup, left it on the counter with a sticky note, "Don't forget umbrella," or "Good luck with your presentation." That day, her side of the counter was empty. She looked at the bare space, then at me. "No coffee." I shrugged. "Didn't think you wanted me doing that kind of thing anymore." She opened her mouth, then closed it. We rode in silence. It was small adjustments at first. I stopped texting her during the day unless it was absolutely necessary. If she came home late, I didn't ask where she'd been. If she wanted to hang out with friends, I didn't check in about when she'd be back. I mirrored her words back at her. Casual, detached, polite. Like we were roommates who happened to share a bed. She noticed. One night she said, "You're quieter lately." I gave her a bland smile. "I'm just matching the energy, I guess." That sentence hit her harder than I intended. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. What surprised me most was how quickly I adapted. Once the initial pain dulled, there was an odd sense of liberation in not trying so hard. I went to the gym more. I reconnected with old college friends. I picked up my guitar again, something I'd neglected for years. She, meanwhile, started showing cracks. At dinner with her friends, I noticed her glancing at me often, as if expecting me to jump in with a joke or story. But I stayed quiet, ate my food, let conversations flow around me. On the drive home, she asked, "Why didn't you talk much tonight?" "You seemed like you were having fun," I said evenly. I didn't want to intrude. Her hands tightened on the wheel. 2 weeks in, the imbalance became visible to others. Her best friend pulled me aside after brunch and asked if everything was okay between us. I shrugged, said we were figuring things out. Later that evening, my girlfriend confronted me. "Did you tell Emily we're having problems?" "No," I said. She asked if we were okay. Maybe she picked up on something. That landed like a dart. She didn't argue further, just sat quietly on the couch, scrolling her phone, lips pressed tight. The strangest part? I started to feel genuinely indifferent. At first, my actions were a performance, a quiet protest. But the more I leaned into it, the more natural it became. She wasn't the center of my orbit anymore. I was building my own gravity again. That terrified her. She began hovering, offering to make dinner, asking if I wanted to watch our old shows, brushing her hand against mine more often. I responded politely, but without warmth. One evening, she tried to kiss me after we'd brushed our teeth. I let her, but I didn't return it with the same urgency. She pulled back, frowning. "Are you falling out of love with me?" she asked. The irony nearly made me laugh. "Instead," I said, "I thought that's what you wanted." Her face crumpled for a second before she masked it with a brittle smile. By week 3, her parents invited us over for dinner. They're traditional, family-oriented people who've always liked me. Midway through the meal, her mother suddenly asked, "Is everything all right between you two? You both seem distant." My girlfriend's fork froze halfway to her mouth. I calmly said, "We're fine, just adjusting to some new dynamics." Her father gave me a sharp look, like he knew there was more. My girlfriend, meanwhile, shot me a glare so sharp I thought it might cut. On the drive home, she hissed, "Why would you say that?" "Because it's true," I replied. "You said you're not in love with me anymore. I'm just adjusting, like you are." She gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles whitened. She didn't speak for the rest of the ride. That night, I lay awake while she turned restlessly beside me. Milo hopped up between us, curling into the empty gulf. I stared at the ceiling, realizing something both exhilarating and devastating. I didn't feel desperate anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her approval, her affection, her crumbs of reassurance. I had my own center of gravity again, and that scared her more than any argument could have. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon when her friends staged what was essentially an intervention. We were supposed to meet them for lunch, nothing fancy, Just a local cafe where the tables wobbled and the iced coffee was always too sweet. But when we arrived, the atmosphere was different. Everyone was already seated, eyes sharp, voices hushed. The moment we sat down, Emily, the same best friend who'd asked me weeks earlier, leaned forward and said, "Okay, what's going on with you two?" My girlfriend stiffened. "Nothing. We're fine." But Emily pressed. "No, you're not. You're like strangers lately. You don't joke anymore. You don't touch. It feels off. Did something happen?" The table fell silent. I could feel half a dozen eyes pinning me in place. I looked at my girlfriend, who avoided my gaze, and then said evenly, "She told me she likes me, but isn't in love with me anymore." The words dropped like a stone into water. Ripples spread across their faces. Shock, confusion, sympathy. My girlfriend's head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. "Why would you say that?" she hissed. "Because it's true," I said. Calm. Flat. "You said it. I'm just being honest." The table fractured into overlapping voices. Emily looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Another friend muttered, "Wait, what?" Someone else said, "That's brutal." My girlfriend shoved her chair back, so hard it squealed. "I need air," she muttered, storming outside. I didn't follow. That evening, she was livid. "You humiliated me in front of my friends," she snapped. I stayed calm. "You humiliated me weeks ago. The difference is, you did it privately. I just let them see the truth." Her jaw clenched. "You're twisting everything." "No," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "I'm holding a mirror." She stormed off, slamming the bedroom door. Milo darted under the couch. I sat in the silence, strangely serene. The next ripple came from her parents. A few days later, I got a call from her mother asking if I could stop by for a chat. That tone, the one that used to make me feel like a teenager again, carried weight. When I arrived, both her parents were waiting in the living room like a tribunal. She wasn't there. Her mother leaned forward. "She's been upset. She says you've grown cold. That you're punishing her somehow. Is that true?" I chose my words carefully. "I'm just treating her the way she asked me to. She said she likes me, but isn't in love with me anymore. I'm respecting that boundary." Her father frowned deeply. "That doesn't sound like her." I met his gaze. It was. The silence stretched, thick as syrup. Eventually, her mother sighed. "I don't know what's happening, but please don't play games with each other. If you're ending things, end them. Don't drag this out." I nodded politely, but inside, something hardened. Drag this out. She dropped a bomb and expected me to just accept it quietly. Now that the fallout was visible, suddenly I was the one dragging it out. No, I wouldn't carry the blame for her words. Back at home, she confronted me again. "My parents are worried sick." "What did you tell them?" "The truth," I replied. She pressed her palms to her temples. "You make it sound so final. Like there's no way back." I tilted my head. "Isn't that what you wanted?" Her voice cracked. "I don't know what I wanted." For the first time, her mask slipped. She wasn't calm, composed, or detached. She was unraveling. The next week was a whirlwind of contradictions. One night, she came home with takeout from my favorite Thai place, acting like nothing had happened. She curled against me on the couch, laughing too loudly at a sitcom we'd seen before. The next morning, she was ice cold again, scrolling her phone in silence. Her texts oscillated between, "Hope you're having a good day, red heart," and hours of nothing. Her friends reached out to me privately, asking if she was okay, if I was okay. I gave vague answers, unwilling to feed the gossip mill, but unwilling to protect her narrative either. Meanwhile, my detachment grew roots. I wasn't playing a role anymore. I was genuinely done. One night, as we lay in bed, she whispered into the darkness, "Do you hate me now?" I stared at the ceiling, tracing the shadows cast by the streetlight outside. "No, I don't hate you. I just don't love you the same way anymore." Her breath hitched. She turned toward me, but I didn't move. That sentence, the mirror of hers, hung between us, heavy and undeniable. By week 6, her friends started reaching out less. I suspect she'd been vague with them, maybe even painting herself as the one blindsided. But the damage was done. They knew the words came from her, not me. Her parents, too, stopped calling. A quiet shame seemed to settle over her. And yet, she still lingered, still slept in our bed, still left her things scattered across the apartment. It was as if she'd opened the door to leave, then realized the world outside wasn't what she wanted, and now she was frantically trying to slam it shut again. But the thing about doors is, Once they've been opened, you can't unsee the other side. The final crack came one Sunday afternoon. She walked into the living room where I was strumming my guitar, sat down across from me, and said, "I think I made a mistake." I didn't look up, just kept playing softly. About what? About what I said. About us. Her voice trembled. "I do love you. I just got scared. I thought maybe I was missing out. I thought being honest would free me somehow. But now I feel like I'm losing you, and I can't stand it." I let the last chord fade. My hands were steady. My chest felt hollow. "You already lost me," I said quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. For once, I didn't reach to wipe them away. Final update. After her confession, I think I made a mistake. I didn't explode. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, guitar in hand, feeling the echo of my own words. "You already lost me." For the next few days, she moved through the apartment like a ghost. Sometimes she tried to cling, making breakfast, brushing her hand against mine, laughing too loudly at my jokes. Other times, she froze me out, sulking in silence as if I had betrayed her. The pendulum swings didn't move me anymore. I'd crossed some invisible line where her moods no longer dictated mine. Eventually, I said the words she hadn't expected. "I think it's time you found your own place." She stared at me, wide-eyed. "You're kicking me out." I stayed calm. "We're not in love anymore. This apartment feels like purgatory. We both deserve clarity." She tried bargaining. "What if we try couples therapy? What if I show you I can change?" I shook my head. "Therapy can't unsay the truth. And you didn't just say it. You lived it for weeks." I mirrored it, and now we're both standing in the wreckage. She broke down crying, clutching at my arm. But my heart was steady. I'd grieved already. In the silence after her sentence, in the weeks of detachment, in the quiet nights where Milo filled the space between us. This was just paperwork now. The logistics were brutal but necessary. We sat down with a calendar and divided the apartment into checklists. She'd move out by the end of the month. Furniture split evenly. Milo stayed with me. Even she admitted the cat trusted me more. I documented everything. Photos of the apartment before she packed, written agreements about which items were hers, timestamps of text exchanges. Not because I expected a fight, but because I'd learned a painful truth. People rewrite history when cornered. And I was right. 2 weeks later, a mutual friend texted me. "Hey, why is she telling people you blindsided her?" Apparently, in her new version, I was the one who suddenly checked out, who grew cold without warning, who abandoned her emotionally. She left out the original incision. "I like you, but I'm not in love with you anymore." At first, the lies stung. Then they didn't. I had my proof, my receipts. I didn't need to broadcast them. People who mattered either already knew or could draw their own conclusions. The more she tried to paint herself as the victim, the more brittle her story sounded. And the quieter I stayed, the more credibility I seemed to have. Silence became my shield. The day she finally moved out was anticlimactic. Cardboard boxes, the scrape of tape, the sound of drawers slamming. We barely spoke. At one point, she held Milo one last time, burying her face in his fur. "Take care of him," she whispered. "I will," I said. And then she was gone. The aftermath wasn't fireworks of freedom. It was gray mornings where the apartment echoed too loudly, meals eaten in silence, a hollow ache where routine used to live. But slowly I rebuilt. I filled the space with my own rhythms. Early gym sessions, guitar practice, coffee with friends I'd neglected. I even started journaling, writing down the fragments of myself I'd ignored for years. Her absence was heavy, but it was clean. No more half-love, no more second-guessing. Months later, Emily reached out. We met for coffee, and she told me my ex had admitted, tearfully, that she didn't know what she wanted and ruined something good. Emily asked gently, "Would you ever take her back?" I smiled, not cruelly, but with finality. "You can't unring a bell." Here's the truth I've come to accept. Her sentence cut me open, but it also freed me. I learned that love without honesty is suffocating, but honesty without responsibility is lethal. She wanted to test the waters of missing out, to dabble in freedom while keeping me as her safety net. When I refused to play that role, she panicked. And that's what this whole ordeal taught me. Sometimes the cruelest words aren't meant as cruelty at all. Sometimes they're spoken by people who don't understand their own weight until the echo hits them. But echoes don't rewind. Today, I'm not bitter. I don't hate her. If anything, I feel a strange compassion, for the part of her that wanted adventure, that feared being just reliable. But compassion doesn't erase the fact that she detonated our relationship and expected me to sweep up the pieces. I chose not to. And while the victory feels quieter than I imagined, no triumphant speeches, no cinematic closure, it's mine. The truth weighed more than the win. But I carry it with steadier hands now.